Hello, I'm Oscar Macchioni, a piano pedagogy professor at the University of North Texas. I want to introduce and share with all of you one of my favorite composers, Karol Szymanowski. As a young postgraduate student from South America at the Academy of Music of Krakow in Poland some 30 years ago, I had never heard about Szymanowski before. I was introduced to him in my second lesson at the Academy by my teacher, Professor Ewa Bukojemska. Szymanowski's music is not easy to read or perform, and the complexity and sophistication of his piano writing makes some pianists reluctant to approach his scores. An excellent introduction to Szymanowski piano music is his 9 Preludes Opus 1, which he composed and published when he was still a teenager. These small piano gems, some lasting just over a minute, present many technical and musical challenges, containing rich textures and some unusual score indications that need to be carefully interpreted. Karol Szymanowski's early period was influenced mainly by Chopin, Scriabin, and even Wagner, but we can definitely see very personal traits even then. In this presentation, I will explore some of the pianistic and musical challenges, serving as a brief introduction to his music. By any means, I will try to cover all aspects needed for consideration when playing these preludes. However, many common idiomatic features and all preludes are worth exploring. Prelude number 1 is in B minor. Many of the features in these preludes could apply to others, thus I will focus on these a little bit longer than others. The main challenge here is the left hand reverse arpeggios. Overall, the left hand must be expressive and flexible to support the very exposed right hand melody. Avoid any straightforward extreme evenness or plain performance of these opening measures. This is a very introverted prelude. The left hand here is unsure and is searching for what it will develop later. Do not stretch or over-prepare the left hand. Keep the fingers close to the keys and close to each other. Use a closed hand position following the topography of the keyboard. Each finger, along with the hand and forearm, should go where the key is, and there should not be fighting by stretching fingers. These preludes require some clever use of pedal, since the lowest note of the arpeggio usually falls at the end of the measure and not at the beginning, as in most music. Use mostly half or quarter syncopated pedal, which usually starts on beat 2 and prolongs over beat 1 with some exceptions. These preludes are truly little gems, and any extreme exaggeration of the tempo fluctuation, name it rubato, tenuto, ritardando, rallentando, could destroy the natural flow and their fragile structure and form. So let's clarify some of these terms. Szymanowski loves to use tenuto, ritardando, rallentando. Tenuto, as a written word 10, affects one note only and not the speed of the piece. Tenuto is to hold the note and delay the next beat, quite different from the tenuto mark. Ritardando is usually used on a few notes and should be minimal. Rallentando is used in longer group of notes and its effect is more pronounced than ritardando. Starting on measure 24 and later used on measure 36 on, there is a lot of left hand finger crossing over 5. This is not common technique for most pianists, and later it is used in many other preludes. Similar to number 1, this prelude presents some of the same problems for the left hand and pedaling, as he uses mainly reverse arpeggios. I suggest starting this prelude with no pedal for the first beat, half note, using finger legato or over legato, and then adding pedal. Starting on measure 10, I suggest bringing out the left hand first note of the group. This may happen again in the climax, measure 22 and 26 and beyond, as a specific voicing helps to blend and transition seamlessly from the end of the climax to the coda. In measure 16, we encounter for the first time an uncommon musical term, afflitto, which means afflicted. We will encounter many more interesting terms through many of these preludes. Prelude number 3 in D flat. This is a highly polyphonic prelude. To achieve the required dolce legato, the fingering becomes exceptionally awkward but necessary at last. The pedal should be used to keep the smoothness of the legato but not to achieve legato, since the clarity of the polyphony is most important. Here, there are some very complicated writing in measures 17 and 19, where the tie notes are passed from different staffs. In addition, there is a counter melody in one of the middle voices, and a persisting quasi-campana vibrato most like bells, which should not be confused with plain loud. Prelude number 4. The main feature of this prelude is the chromatic right hand and the use of the time signatures 6/8 for the right hand and 2/4 for the left hand, which creates a constant 3 against 2 in addition to syncopations and ties. We saw fingering crossing over 5 in the left hand in Prelude number 1. Here, in Prelude number 4, this mainly occurs in the right hand. Students will have to spend some time figuring out the fingering to achieve legato while dealing with a lot of chromaticism and two voices in the same hand. Measure 20, there is a very unpractical and complicated fingering from the editors. I recommend playing the bass staff with the left hand and not switching as suggested. For the return of the theme at measure 32 and 33, take the alto voice with the left hand, then return to the right hand as in the beginning. Prelude number 5, this is the only extroverted, fast and furious of all preludes. It's rhythmically odd to look at those right-hand triplets misplaced across the measures, but the sonoric result is not that complicated. I suggest blocking the right hand in octaves first to work the hand position and the placement of the beats. For extended chords that are impossible to reach vertically, such as those in measure 30 and at the end, I suggest that instead of rolling them, which produce a weaker effect, redistributing the notes and break them between the hands. This will produce a strong punctuation mark, the only two times we actually play hands together besides the octave passages in this prelude. Prelude number 6. This is probably the most interesting of all preludes, almost expressionistic, like Wagner, who Szymanowski admired. Extremely chromatic and yet so simple as a 5-1 cadence in A minor. The character is static, like the calm preceding a storm, nothing moves and everything is in place. Playing from the keys, not attacking the keys from above, will provide the right tone for this prelude. Also, the pedal needs to be very precise to tie or liberate some of the harmonies. I suggest redistributing some of the notes, like in measure 6, third beat. The left hand note can be played with the right hand, as suggested later on in measure 17. Prelude number 7. Like in Prelude number 1, we see here reverse arpeggios, which require careful pedaling. There are several places with irregular rhythms such as 10 over 4, 5 over 3, 6 over 4, 9 over 4, which should be treated as Chopin's irregular grouping, in the sense that they are musical gestures when only the downbeat of or first note of the group should be played together. For measure 16, right hand, last 2 beats, I suggest using the same fingering instead of the one suggested on the score. The grace notes, like in Prelude number 1, should be played in the context of the speed and the mood of the preludes, not as a baroque ornament. Hence, I suggest playing them slower than usually, not with a crashing sound. Prelude number 8 in E-flat minor. This prelude features very irregular phrases. For instance, the first phrase is 7 measures long with a grouping of 3 plus 2 plus 2 measures more or less. At first, it may seem like the right hand is made entirely of a succession of eighth notes with the very occasional use of quarters and half notes. But examining the inner phrases and their inflections, we discover a very complicated and irregular musical landscape. Measure 35 and 37 can be redistributed, taking the right hand first eighth note of each group under the left hand and the other eighth notes with the right hand. They are all within an octave reach. The only exception is measure 37, beat 2, 3 and 4, where the left hand G flat and B flat can be taken with the right hand. There are two uncommon terms that appear in this prelude. Ravvivando, which means reviving or enlivening, and disperato, which means disparate or with despair. Prelude number 9. This is perhaps one of the most challenging and most beautiful preludes. It summarizes the melancholy embedded in all other preludes. The left hand requires careful practice to achieve the smooth descending moving part, combined with an almost static and repetitive right hand melody. The awkwardness of the left hand needs careful negotiation with the right hand by either playing sotto or sopra, depending on the passage. There is a misprint and an oversight of the editors on measure 14. The last beat, the last 3 notes, supposed to be 16 notes and not 8 notes as is on the editions. The last measure, 24, requires clever voicing as the 3 moving notes are clearly notated outside the chord. I suggest playing the E natural with the bass, then rolling the chord, and not as the last note of the rolling chord. This emphasizes the E natural appoggiatura as a strong expressive tone. It is written that way, and not as a just passing note coming from the rolling chord.